grow to be even a better student. I know that if she continues to work hard and keep up her positive attitude, she will accomplish great things. So much. Thank you so much for being here. All right. Whenever you are, ready.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you so much. And you guys are free to leave anytime you want. Great. Agenda changes. I know Mr. City Manager, you had an agenda change you'd like to remove.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I am requesting that remove item 2.8 from the consent agenda tonight for further consideration by staff. We'll return to you at a later date.
They're going to motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Great. And now we have Mayor Council reimbursement disclosures, reports on assignments and committees. And just to make sure we're all clear on that, I've been advised by our city attorney that that is about reporting on city business, events, committee meetings you've attended. It's not about announcing further announcements. Because we're going to election season, that's more important than ever. So I just want to reemphasize that. Thank you. Starting with Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you, Mayor. On April 6th, I was in attendance at the Sandag Transportation Committee meeting where we learned that in the mitigation bank, there is $28 million of unspent funds. So I did have a conversation with our city manager, and we'll be looking at ways to spend that money. And you know, the eager cities get it first. So we'll be looking at that. On April 11th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce board meeting. They are discussing their upcoming elections and bylaws. April 12th, I was at the MTS board meeting. MTS will be conducting a fare study. Fares have not been increased or even looked at in 10 years. April 19th, the Chamber of Commerce hosted the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Verandina restaurant on Seacoast Drive, which is a wonderful addition, another complement of restaurants on Seacoast Drive for visitors and residents alike to enjoy. April 20th, again, Sandag Transportation meeting. On that agenda was the regional plan, the San Diego. And if you have not attended any of the outreach meetings or taken the very short survey that they have about the regional plan for transportation, and that includes highways, freeways, local streets and roads, buses, trolley, all of it. So please, if you have not done that survey, please do. I did. It took me like maybe 2 minutes. It really is needed. The public input is needed. On April 24th, this was probably my most favorite event of the month. We had the groundbreaking ceremony for the new restrooms at Veterans Park. I want to thank staff for making that such a wonderful event. And any time that we can invest money back into our parks and the community, it is very well appreciated. Our parks are very well used. So this one, I know Councilmember Patton was there and Councilmember Spriggs was there, and boy, we turned the dirt on that when we were ready.
Thanks for your leadership on that, by the way. That's been your project from the very beginning.
Been my project for 10 years. Finally. April 25th, the mayor and I did attend the library volunteer recognition event. The new library has been opened 1 year, so we were celebrating that. And there was a member of the audience. One of his children was Jack Fisher. One of his children was receiving a volunteer award. Thank you, Mr. Fisher, for your guidance and your good leadership with your family. It shows. One of the interesting statistics was that circulation of the materials in the library have gone up 47%. Mayor and I were both amazed at that. April 26th, I did attend the Chamber of Commerce networking breakfast. This month's breakfast was sponsored by Deb's Cookie Jar. The guest speaker was our very own Public Works Director standing there in the back, Director Eric Minicelli, who provided a presentation on the IB Boulevard project. End of story. Thank you.
Respect.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the restaurant opening on Seacoast Drive was a fabulous event, and I think the mayor and Councilmember West were also there. It just shows you how much we appreciate
new food opportunities on this city council in our community. It was a busy month because a whole month has gone by since our last meeting, and I have a lot of responsibilities on the Metro Wastewater Commission on behalf of Imperial Beach, which is the joint powers authority of all of the smaller communities that balance off against San Diego in developing major new infrastructure, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure for wastewater, and including moving to the new pure water program, which is going to be recycled water for drinking. So there was a meeting on the 5th of the Metro JPA, and we decided that we needed to have a number of separate subcommittee sessions because there are some areas of divergence between the smaller communities in San Diego regarding the most cost-effective way to go into the next $2 billion or so of expenditures regarding how to get to pure water, how to get to recycled water. And we want a more direct, less cost-effective approach than the city has so far been willing to take. Now, we are responsible for 1/3 of the total costs, all of the participating agencies. So we want to make sure we have a say. So I participated in 3 separate ad hoc subcommittee meetings on the same subject, and we're going to have an off-site meeting tomorrow to try to integrate all this information. There is potential litigation involved, so it's a very sensitive subject. That's why I'm not going into too much detail. Excuse me. I also was in Pomona on the 12th and 13th, representing the city and chairing the League of California Cities Housing, Community, and Economic Development statewide policy committee. There are about 60 or 70 cities represented on that policy committee, and there's a large number of bills pending in the Senate and in the Assembly regarding affordable housing and homelessness, which are both areas within my committee's jurisdiction. And I'm trying to reconcile various interests there. Some of those communities don't want any more affordable housing or to address the homeless issue, and other communities do. And so that's always an interesting process. For us in Imperial Beach, we have a lot of affordable housing already, but we can always, but we need to have maximum local control over how we go forward with housing and other programs in Imperial Beach. And that's one of the things that the League is very good for, is trying to balance state imposed measures over, instead of balance those off, hold those off, and instead support local control. A lot of the legislation will allow developers to come in and develop high-density, high-rise projects if they meet certain criteria with no local management of that process. And those are the kinds of bills that we are opposed to. Let's see, the last thing is the Coastal Commission is meeting in Northern California on the 9th, next week. And I'm going to be making a presentation on behalf of the Coastal Cities of California. I'm chair of the Coastal Cities Issues Group of the League. And we will be trying to forge a collaborative working relationship with the Coastal Committee and making some comments on their recently redrafted residential sea level rise guidelines, which will directly affect us as we're moving forward with our own update of our local coastal program, which is going on as we speak right now. So all of this is really, I think, relevant to our community, even though a lot of it is taking place outside of Imperial Beach. And I'm very proud to be IB's representative on these groups. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I visited Linda Vista Skate Park and with a group of citizens, and spent about an hour there and really looking into how we could transform our skate park into something a little better, bigger, and got some great ideas. Talked to a lot of people, interviewed some people. And then also I went to the new bathroom, Veterans Park. was awesome. Miss Bragg, very excited. And the rest of my month was busy working with kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton.
Excellent. April 13th, I was went to the Sandag Tribal Summit. Really an interesting.
Thanks, by the way, for going to that.
Oh, no worries, no worries. It's cool. The Tribal Summit was really interesting. We really were talking about a lot of the road development that's happening in our rural communities and how to really balance transportation between on smaller roads that our rural communities have. So it was a very long day but it was really an interesting discussion that we had between all of the tribes and all of the Sandag members. So it was great. On April 19th, I think I was happy to be part of the Center for Sustainable Energy Equinox Quality of Life Dashboard. And it was a very interesting day. We had a little rain that day, so it was kind of we thought it was going to damper, but a lot of people came out, and I think you should be really happy to know that no other city in the entire group, IB, was mentioned twice for the hard work that we are doing in our community trying to provide things. And it was all about, one, the polystyrene ban, and also the Lime bikes issues that we brought in. So these are all things that the Center for Sustainable Energy has actually looked at for things that are improving communities. So I was really happy to hear our name twice and was beaming a little bit. Got to eat some food at the grand opening through the Italian restaurant. It was good to see some people. And then on April 23rd, one of my responsibilities is the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority. And we had a meeting on the April 23rd where we had two major agenda items that we really discussed. And the first one was really about the lowering of the insurance rates for our taxis from Ms. Bragg. I know you're quite aware of it. So the city of San Diego and also MTS has actually lowered the amount of insurance that our taxis are required to have from $1 million down to $350,000. And we obviously have a lot of taxis at the airport, so we were looking for the guidance that the MTS put together, and we followed the lead, and we did it for the good, hardworking families that are our taxi drivers for our communities. And I was happy to. Your name was actually mentioned, Ms. Bragg, so I was like, wow, look at that. So it was a great thing. So we followed suit and lowered the insurance as well. And then also the other thing, I think there's a lot of news that's been happening lately about the Assemblymember Gonzalez Fletcher, her bill to move the airport underneath the port. And we at the Airport Authority had originally rejected that based on we wanted a little bit more guidance from what Assemblymember Gonzalez Fletcher was talking about. So our CEO, Kim Becker, went up there and met with representatives of her office, and they have decided to put a study together where we're going to call together the convention center, the Airport Authority, and the port to convene a discussion about it and really a review with members from all sides to come together and come up with a better plan. So 2020, that'll be the goal. Then they have actually going to put it off, form the committee, and then by 2020 make a decision. So that was an interesting thing, and the board voted unanimously to support that. And then on April 30th, I was as your Bayshore Bikeway, we spent the day talking a little bit about, thanks to Mayor Dedina's leadership, on trying to expand the walkways in Imperial Beach and in Coronado. I think that we have a great bikeway that's out there, but we want to make sure that we've got places for our pedestrians to walk as well. So we discussed some things. There are some items on the agenda that we are looking at, which include moving some fences, some businesses that are right up against our Bayshore Bikeway. So looking at for action, and we want to develop more walking for our community so we can have walking and bicycling, because right on a Class 1 bikeway, it doesn't work real well. So. And then we moved on to, we were finishing the National City segment of that area. A very, very difficult portion is the part by 32nd Street. I don't know if you guys have ever been by the naval base there in the morning. That's a very, very high traffic. So with a discussion from Captain Love, who is the CEO of Naval Station San Diego, they're actually decided we are going to tear down the pedestrian walkway and build a new walkway that's going to be better for the bicyclists and for the walkers and all transportation in there. So they're going to put in some more turn lanes in there. So it's going to make the entrance into 32nd Street even better. And I have to admit, it was a great day for transportation from the bicyclists to walkers to the Naval Station San Diego. So it was a great event where we came together and actually made a decision. So, and then last on May 1st,
City Manager Hall and I spent the morning. Well, I spent a little of the morning. You spent more of it there. But at the South County Economic Development Center, I'm in council. Congresswoman Davis was the guest speaker, and I am very, very happy to say that she came down there, is not our representative, but really spoke about how the impact of the Tijuana River Valley sewage spills are impacting all of South County. And she brought up something that has been, as a former naval officer, it has been a bane of my life that the Navy has not been a player in trying to stop these sewage spills and get involved in this process. And she has been pushing on it, and she feels like she may have some inroads there. So I'm very excited, and it was good to see Congresswoman Davis. She's a great person, and yeah, so that's all.
Great. We want to thank all four of you for all your leadership outside the city. It's really important. You know, the reputation of the city is, and our city, all of you, is exemplary, and we're known as a city that does serious work, and all of the feedback I get from all of our members and participating in all these committees is really great. So thank you. It really makes a big difference. So with that, last Friday I was at the Sandag meeting where the board selected a potential new executive director. I can't say who it is, but I did. It was could have been a very contentious and uncivil meeting. It was handled very well. A lot of robust discussion. Kind of like the way that we carry out our meetings. So I was happy to see that, because that isn't always the case for Sandag now, and something I get concerned about. A lot of chit chat and a lot of drama and not a lot of work getting done. So I'm hoping that can help. We can move things forward at Sandag. And then I attended 2 weeks ago the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce's trip to Mexico City. That was paid for by Sandag. So the main issues that were discussed, there were 3 work items discussed. It was really 4. One was obviously supporting the North American Free Trade Agreement that's being negotiated right now between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Number 2 was Tijuana River was the single biggest issue that was discussed by 90 members of the delegation from both the United States and Mexico. And we met with the highest level representatives of the Mexican government. So over the last month, we've discussed this issue with Mexico's foreign minister at Sandag. That resulted in Mexico allocating $4.3 million in funding to fix a Tijuana sewage system. Obviously, that's a down payment. What should be $400 million, but that's a start. In Mexico City, the first person, we met with the Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs. And then we had a speech and talk by Mexico's second or third highest official, the Minister of the Interior, Alfonso Navarrete, who specifically mentioned Tijuana River stuff. And from then I met with the Undersecretary of Mexico's National Water Commission, Francisco Muniz, who's in charge of the Tijuana system. So that was good to be able to discuss that with him. And we met with the Ambassador of Mexico, of the U.S. to Mexico. So the message was, despite the fact that Mexico is changing its government, this is now a priority. And so I also met with the director of the SILA, the counterpart to the IBWC, Roberto Salmon. Well, I give credit to Mexican officials are a lot more forthcoming on what they're doing to fix the problem than our own United States officials, who have very little communication with and basically don't communicate with us at all at any level. So that's very helpful. Then Mr. Hall and I, less than a month ago, met with the top officials at the United States EPA, Ken Wagner and Sarah something or other, forget her name, something or other. And so to acknowledge their support for getting EPA funding. So we have $1.7 million that was taken from the federal budget and put into fixing the sewer system. So that's going, so we want to make sure that money is spent well. So because of that, today I met with the top officials from the North American Development Bank at our beachfront. They were going to meet the new head of the sewage system in Tijuana. And I really emphasized that we need to make sure that money was spent this year, because the federal budget was a 2-year budget, which means there'll be an additional $1.7 million next year. So it's not a lot of money, but it's better than nothing. But the most important thing is that Mexico just spent $4.3 million. That $1.7 million has to be matched in cash by Mexico. So they actually have to, the money's only spent when Mexico puts in $1.7 million as well. So that's $3.4 million for the sewer system we didn't have before. So you can get a lot done with that. And we're going to be really pushing on that. So anyways, I'm pleased about that. So we're going to continue to advocate for that. I really wish I spent all my time surfing and not talking about water quality. But I want to thank the city staff, our residents, and more importantly, our council colleagues for aggressively pushing on that, because frankly, it's been great to have all the help. And I was really moved by our Chamber of Commerce. It's unusual to see a business Chamber of Commerce advocate for environmental issues. And the fact that everyone from Jerry Sanders on down to Mayor Faulkner, who brought this issue as well, and federal officials as well, it's great to see their support for helping solve this problem. So with that,
Good job, Mr. Mayor, on all of this leadership. Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. It's definitely a team effort. Okay, now we have Mr. Helmer has an announcement.
Yeah, Council, I thought it was important to let you guys know that this weekend is our annual Homefront Cleanup. That's where it's at Mar Vista High School, where if you're a resident and you have a couch that's in your garage or construction debris that's just been sitting around and you need to clean up your yard, go to Mar Vista High School anytime between 7 o'clock and 2 o'clock. As many loads as you need to take down there to clean up your yard. It's free for all residents. You can also drop off your TVs, your refrigerators, any large bulky items, any yard waste or green waste. You can also bring your important files to shred there as well. So this is our annual, and we usually get probably over 1,000 loads dropped off every single year. I expect this year will be just as big, maybe even bigger. It does have a difference in our community. So if you hear anyone that's saying that they don't have any way to dispose of materials, have them call EGCO as well, because if you're a senior citizen and you have no way to get there, you can schedule a pickup from EGCO. You can also, if you miss this weekend, you can still call EGCO, and every resident gets 2 free pickups a year from their house at their curbside. All you do is drag your stuff to your curb, call EGCO, and they'll pick it up on a regular trash day.
And that's this Saturday?
This Saturday.
Cinco de Mayo?
So yeah, it is Cinco de Mayo.
You can go to Cinco de Mayo.
All right. 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock, Mar Vista High School.
Great, thank you so much. A great event. Mr. Hall.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, every year you've asked us to do, excuse me, an open house where we meet with the residents and talk about some of the things that are happening in the community. We plan to do that again this year, and that event will be held on May 19th, which is a Saturday. People have a hard time getting out sometimes in the evening, so we thought we would try it on a Saturday. Wanted to let you know that we are expanding it this year, and we will be having a community expo. So it won't just be city departments, but we've invited all of the community, like for instance, the Boys and Girls Club or the scouting programs or a whole bunch of different community people to come out and participate in that, so that people can understand what kind of groups we have in the community, what kind of activities we have, things that they can do for their kids, things that adults can do. So we've expanded that a little bit. If anybody has any questions, be sure to contact Courtney Stevens. She is our events coordinator. She's here in the front. Raise your hand in case people have questions. And she'll be helping us put that together, and that'll be a really good event for the city, I think. We really love that event, and we hope a lot of people will come out. It will be at Veterans Park.
What time?
It'll be from 10 to 2. From 10 o'clock a.m. to 2 o'clock in the morning. All day long. No, 10 to 2. Oh, that's right. It's Armed Forces Day, so it's very appropriate to have it in Veterans Park. How about that? So, thank you.
And I commented to Courtney, you've done a great job on social media and all the web stuff. It's really great, really enhanced presence. So thank you. Really positive. So we have public comments, and we see we have some visitors from Solana Beach. So if we could have Laylee, Enzo, and Coco Johnson come up, please. Thanks so much for coming up from Solana Beach, or coming down from Solana Beach. And yet, there you go. Did they have to turn it on, or is it on? Okay, great.
Okay. Good evening, City Council members. My name is Lace Johnson. I am Enzo Johnson, and this is our sister, Coke. In 2011, when we were 1 and 3 years old, our family became aware of the dangerous public safety issue taking place at San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station, only 31 miles from our home in North County, San Diego. Now that I am 8 and Lace is 10 years old, we're able to speak for ourselves, and we're asking you, council members, to help ensure the safety of children like us in Imperial Beach and all of Southern California for generations to come. Please do not allow Southern California Edison and Holtec to abandon San Onofre's radioactive waste on our beaches in San Diego County. It is our great-great-great-grandchildren who will inherit this radioactive waste problem if we do not address it now. This would mean no more surfing, sailing, snorkeling, or any ocean sports that all Southern Californians love to do. Thank you for listening and doing everything you can to protect the homes, health, and the ocean-loving lifestyle here in Imperial Beach. I know that you will do the right thing to keep all children here safe from a nuclear disaster at San Onofre.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Now, I think we have your dad, Torgen. Thank you so much. Torgen, do you want to come up? Yeah, great. I agree. We can follow up on that one.
The boys.
We agree. Oh,
Right,
thank you.
so
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
those were my kids. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, and city staff. My name is Torgen Johnson. I'm from Solana Beach. And I'm here representing a coalition of business leaders, elected officials, scientists, former military leaders, and concerned citizens in San Diego County. In 2013, my family hosted the former chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Dr. Yasko, and the former Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Naoto Kan, to speak at a San Diego County Administrative Center conference that we had set up, a public conference titled Fukushima Ongoing Lessons for California. Shortly afterwards, Southern California Edison, 3 days after, decided to permanently shut down the San Onofre nuclear generating station that had 2 damaged reactor units that they were going to start up and operate at 75% and see what happens. The Prime Minister said bad idea when he spoke here. He shared his lessons, and the first one was severe nuclear accidents happen, so plan for them and don't invite them. The second one is, he said he was most concerned about the nuclear waste of Fukushima, not the reactors melting down. And the third thing he said to San Diego and to Edison's executives, he said, had I lost control of the stored nuclear waste in Fukushima, he said he was preparing for an emergency order to permanently evacuate Tokyo, 160 miles away from the fuel, spent fuel. And Tokyo is the largest city in the world, a metropolitan area of 50 million people. This coalition that I represent is deeply concerned about the nuclear waste and that the public's concerns, very well-founded, well-researched concerns, are not being taken seriously. There's a team of us now. One of them is a high-level radioactive waste policy advisor for 4 presidential administrations who's on our team. The other one is a former 2-star rear admiral that was in charge of the U.S. Navy's Southwest region all the way out to China, Admiral Len Herring, retired Admiral Len Herring. They're all speaking on this issue very clearly, loud and clear. Our concerns are quickly, the canisters are unmonitored, can't be repaired. The fuel assemblies develop hydrides and can explode. It's impossible. Emergency response is impossible. What they promised us as the Plan B is a facility in Idaho to haul canisters to. That facility was demolished in 2009. They didn't even know that. We're asking that you agendize this item here in Imperial Beach to be part of the county-wide discussion. This is at the far end of San Diego County, but 160 miles was too close for the accident at Fukushima. If you agendize it, we'll bring in the experts to have a discussion with you. And it could be a simple 30-minute discussion or however long you want. But I think it helps educate the public and helps educate elected officials up and down the coast of what this situation in San Onofre means to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think sure we can do that given the fact that our colleagues in North County all voted to support efforts to clean up the Tijuana River. So we're more than glad to address that in the future. Thank you for your leadership.
If you could give us some contact information.
I have it here.
Oh, you have it? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
Got it. We got it. Thank you.
Now I have Mr. Crenby.
I agree with the gentleman about the nuclear waste. I used to work for a nuclear power plant, and the United States pay a lot of money for disposal of the material, and sometimes they ship it overseas to a low-income country if they have little money problem, so they get the disease there. My name is Thomas Crenby. I am.
Why don't you, Mr. Crenby, address the council and just speak into the
I came from the hospital. because I have an issue with the Imperial. I'm supposed to be in the hospital.
Mr. Kremba.
In case I
You
fainted,
need to address the council.
I will, but I need the public to know as well because I did not get no answer from you. I have an issue. I applied for permit at 11:50, or is it 11:50? Yes,
Mr. Kremba.
11:50.
You
Yeah.
need to address the council. They can't hear you. You need to speak into the microphone.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I am supposed to be at the hospital today. I excused myself to come to the meeting because the city of Imperial Beach for 1 month failed to give me an answer. They declare my home to be unsafe. They did not even step 1 foot inside of it. They put a sign unsafe and vacate to my RV in my driveway. I have a lawnmower. I'm afraid. I wonder how can they missed it. They did not put do not operate. I have permit and they said they want to come over and inspect my property. I said, you're welcome. They came in and shut down. They throw my paralyzed aunt. She's 78 years old. She can't walk. I have pregnant people, the all low-income family, and people who are helpless. You guys shut down, remove the electric meter from the property where I have permit, and then you remove the electric meter from the property that have nothing to do with the permit. For 1 month, I asked the city, please give me an answer. Why did you guys do this to my property? By the way, in case I finish or so I'm having, this is how you get me back to the hospital. That's the doctor instructed, the cardiovascular disease. And for 1 month, I could not get from the city an answer. Why did you do this to my property? There's the guy who sent the violation. He did not step a foot in the property. And the guy who did the inspection did not step a foot inside the house. Why did you declare it to be unsafe? I have built it in 2007 with permit, with final approval, and nothing been done to it since then. Why did you guys treat me unfairly? I don't ask for a break. When I get the permit, you guys ask me to get the neighbor permission, and I had the neighbor permission in writing, and it's registered in the courthouse now. When 1020 Fern Avenue did their project, and they have renovation, major renovation, it took them for about 3 months or so. They don't have enough parking. You guys did not require them to come to me. And in order for them to accommodate 6 residents, they have to park on my driveway, and they are parking on my driveway. I asked the city to take a look at the issue. I did not hear from you. For 1 month, you've been CC'd. You've been CC'd. I did not get answer from you guys. I don't ask for a break. I just try to treat me fair.
Mr. Kremba, you need to wrap. We like to ask you to wrap it up. And I'm assuming,
okay.
I think it's my understanding that the city staff
please, I said what I have to say.
Great, thank you.
What they did me wrong big time.
It's my understanding
they throw away my aunt. She's 78, paralyzed. They're low-income family. They have no right. And I told them, you don't the safety code to protect people. You don't destroy people so you can.
Mr. Cranby, it's my understanding the city's offered to meet with you. I've been on the email chain, so I'd like to ask the city manager we can facilitate that meeting.
It's been over a month. I even.
Mr. Cranby,
Mr. Kremba.
Mr. Cranby.
For the one who give me a reason why.
Mr. Cranby, I know you're upset. We've heard you. I've asked the city manager to meet with you.
Sir. I need solution.
Great.
My property vacant, my family in the street.
Mr. Cranby, you've made your point. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming here. I know you're upset.
Thank you for hearing me.
Great.
You get the city attorney. Please take a look at the issue.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great.
People are fair and nice. I don't ask for a break. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And now we have presentation of proclamation and recognition of Bike to Work Day. Whereas the month of May is National Bike Month and Thursday, May 17, 2018 is Bike to Work Day. And whereas National Bike Month 2018 promotes bicycle commuting, safety, and driver awareness of bicycle riders, and whereas Sandag is sponsoring National Bike to Work Day to recognize biking to work and to promote employer and commuter participation in May. And whereas biking is proven transportation alternatives that reduces traffic congestion, air quality, noise, improves mobility, and provides an alternative to driving alone. And whereas San Diego area commuters can reduce their weekly solo commute trips and the demands replaced on the region's roadways by 20% by choosing a commute alternative like biking to work just one, I think it was alternative and made a mistake, to work just once a week. So this city council recognizes that May is National Bike Month and May 17, 2018 is Bike to Work Day. Great, thank you. Okay, so I would like to entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items numbers 2.1 through 2.7 and 2.9 through 2.12. Great, thank you.
Motion carried unanimously.
Now we have item 4.1, public hearing on resolution number 2018-7914 of the City of Imperial Beach, California, adjusting the regional transportation congestion improvement plan fee for fiscal year 2018 to 2019. Public hearing is open. Public Works Director Minicelli will give the report. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very short. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Very quick report here. The RTCIP is a transportation mitigation fee. It's collected by local jurisdictions on every new residential unit constructed. Earlier this year, Sandag elected to change the minimum fee. This change on this resolution will allow us to change our fee to meet the minimum for going forward for July 1st. So pretty straightforward. We do this every year. If you have any questions, I'm certainly available.
I had a comment. Was having a discussion with our city manager regarding the 28 million in the mitigation bank, and during that discussion, Mr. Hall, if you remember, you and I were talking about getting IB Boulevard designated as an arterial road as well, especially because it is considered an evacuation route too, as part of our tsunami evacuation plan. But are you going to follow up on that? Where would we go from here? I just wanted to make sure that that issue did get on the record and we raised it.
Yeah, thank you. I did get a chance to talk to Mr. Minicelli about that. In order to spend this funding, it has to be classified as a regional collector road. So there's a process to do that. We'd want to look through, because that would also change the classification of some of the other roads in the community. So there's perhaps some unintended consequences. So we want to make sure that IB Boulevard is appropriate for that. And Eric may have a better explanation than that.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a thought to that. I think we'd have to look at 13th Street or some other streets. Obviously, there needs to be a connector road. So it's got to connect from basically the highway to the highway. So we'd also have to talk to, again, some of this would be out of our hands. We'd have to go to Sandag and talk to them about it. Obviously, Coronado Avenue in San Diego would have to also be considered part of that same reasoning to change the designation. We can certainly pursue that going forward. I'll state that it's not a big pile of money. We certainly, especially with what's going to be happening on Palm, where we're going to be taking over Palm Avenue, hopefully in the near future, we have plenty of things to spend the money on Palm. If we're having any sort of issue of not being able to spend the dollars on Palm, I would definitely be much more in favor of looking for other regional arterial streets in town. But we can certainly at least get the conversation started with Sandag and see what it would take to add Imperial Beach Boulevard to that designation.
So, no. Oh, so just to make sure I'm clear, there's this $28 million and I've been hearing about, but no one seems to know how to access it. Is that correct?
Well, some cities have spent their allotment. What ended up happening is it's allotted to each city. And for instance, the last project we did, if you remember, we took the turf out of the Bicentennial Triangle and replaced that with some drought-tolerant landscaping and did some improvements there. That came from, for instance, this sort of money. So you can use it to enhance those major corridors. And right now, Palm Avenue is our only major corridor, so the money's kind of limited to that.
So of that 28 million, how much could it be asked for?
I'm not aware of this 20 million. What we have is
a big portion of that is other cities.
Yeah. We get $2,500 per unit built in town. For many years, that was a very small amount. Now, in recent years, we've got the major developments, and so the pile of money got a little larger. But again, we're not having any trouble spending it on Palm at this point.
And so I won't ask about Palm Avenue. Yeah, okay, and where we're at on that. Good.
We can maybe encourage our neighbors to spend a little bit more money on.
Do we have any speaker slips at all?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Any other council questions? All right, so closing public hearing. Thank you so much for your report. And I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2018-7914.
So moved.
Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, now for the fun stuff. All right. Also, I want to thank our local boys. Are the local Boy Scouts still here? We have local. They left. They just. Oh, I meant to thank them. Okay. Well, anyway. Mr. Fisher, I thought you were here with the Boy Scouts. So you're doing community service? Okay. Anyway, thank you. Okay, so we have item 5.1, public meeting to review draft proposed amendments to the city's zoning ordinance and municipal code to allow for limited commercial cannabis activities with regulations. Assistant City Manager Dush will give the report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So as you'll recall, the last time that we spoke about this, it was the initiation of a 45-day minimum public review draft. And so always starting with the what and the why. This particular item before you this evening is the consideration of the public input that we received on the draft ordinance that was out for distribution, as I had indicated earlier, for a minimum of 45 days. And then also seeking city council direction to staff on the ordinance elements, which I'll go over here momentarily. And so why? Currently, as you know, the city has a moratorium that expires in February of 2019. We currently do not have regulations in place to address commercial cannabis. And so we need an ordinance to either allow or prohibit before February 2019. So just briefly, I won't spend a lot of time on this. We spent a lot of time on this topic. There was the ad hoc committee of Councilmember Bragg and Mayor Pro Tem West, and had a number of meetings and did a lot of research. So real briefly, so the essence of this discussion is to go over the proposed ordinance elements, and then I'll briefly summarize the input that we had received from the citizen comments. That's on the next page, and I want to state that it's by no means an exhaustive list, because the letters that were received are in your packet for full. I'm just hitting the highlights as I am here with these proposed ordinance elements. And so the essence of the ordinance that could be put forward would allow for one retail outlet. It would have 900-foot separations from sensitive uses, those things like schools and parks and playgrounds. There's also a landscape residential buffer built in. There are also building and design standards that includes those elements that we talked, about the LEED certification, the vehicle charging stations. There's also safety and signage elements. And I would like to emphasize that this is a multi-step application process. It is effectively a 7-step preliminary application process. It includes a variety of elements, such as proof of funding. There has to be a business plan, an operation plan. There's a background and clearance component. There's a location compliance, a security plan, regulatory design compliance, proof of lawful experience, and then of course application fees. And all of that comes together in a process that would be reviewed at an administrative level. If all of those elements were met, then it could go through a process where they would get a sort of preliminary sort of affirmation that would then come before the city council to say, hey, this application meets all the design criteria that were identified in the ordinance, and here you are to affirm it. There's also a built-in review period. So just like, really good best practices is, hey, if there is an ordinance, you should go through and take a look and make sure that it is in good working order. There's a cost recovery. And as we spoke before, if there's more than one, we're calling it a regulatory safety permit, is the nomenclature used. If there's more than one eligible application, then there would be a random selection process to identify that or to pick that particular use. There's also a provision for the city council to consider in its absolute discretion if after a year of operation they would want to consider adding an additional use, and of course that would need to come back, but that provision is built in. And so briefly, I just again summarizing some of the input letters that we had received. There were suggestions to reduce the separations from sensitive uses. From again, the city has identified 900 feet. What the input that we had received was 600 feet or 800 feet. There's also a suggestion to revise the measuring of the separations. What is in the existing ordinance is property line to property line. There's also a request to reduce the residential landscape buffer. Also a suggestion to allow for more than one retail outlet. A suggestion to modify the selection process to either a merit-based or an RFP process. A suggestion to allow more than just retail cannabis uses. And then also a request to expand the allowable zoning areas in the city. Currently, it's regulated just along SR 75 would be the zone district subject to those separations. So that is the essence of this. And so what you're being asked to provide, direction to staff is to consider the public input, the draft ordinances, and then give staff direction to either revise the draft ordinances and then set a subsequent city council public hearing, which could be for June 6th for possible introduction of the ordinances. And again, as an ordinance, it takes 2 reads. And then, of course, if there's additional action that you would like staff to take, that would also be a recommendation. With that concludes our presentation, and we stand ready for any questions.
And for the record, we have a letter or email letter from Laura Wilkinson, who's here this evening, and this is a separate one than you submitted. We have the packet. Is that correct? Great. And with more information, Greg Neal, you provided something, a long letter. Thank you. And then Bob Miller has an email. And Greg and Laura's a lot of I won't go in a lot of discussion. And then Bob Miller says, I support the draft proposed amendments to the city zoning ordinance and municipal code to allow for limited commercial cannabis activities with regulations. Bob Miller is an IB resident. So we have public comments tonight. Because 5 of you or 4 of you actually haven't included, well, I'm sorry, 3 of you where you live. For transparency reasons, I think it's important. You have to give your address, but I'd like you to let us know where you live as well. What city you live in. If you have a business here, that's fine too. But I think it's important for transparency reasons. We know who's addressing the council or where they're from. So we can make up our minds and understand residents versus outside residents as well. Great. Kathleen Lippett from Poway.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kathleen Lippett, and yes, I am from Poway. Although the major focus of my work over the last 20 years has been evidence-based policies to prevent or mitigate youth drug use, the push toward marijuana commercialization has led to another focus. When businesses, youth-serving organizations, churches, and communities became targets for commercialized marijuana businesses, they sought assistance in protecting their places in the community from being displaced by marijuana projects. The program, as they saw it, and the problem, as they saw it in the city of San Diego, seemed especially the treatment of marijuana projects in ways not previously afforded to traditional community businesses. These entities, non-marijuana businesses, began to be treated as impediments to the city's goal of permitting. Like the idea of you beginning with one, well, if you have to allow them, it'd be preferable not to have any, because the pressure will be ongoing from the industry to permit more and to water down and eliminate whatever regulations you try to impose. But at the very least, beginning small and with one operation, you'll be able to provide oversight. All of these entities had experienced it from the problems in the city of San Diego, where many of the same operators were being rewarded with permits, but I understand that yours is going to specify that they be lawful and have previously lawful. One outlet, again, will allow you to do the monitoring effectively and be a test case. Regarding the assertion that it will increase the black market seems to be here to stay, whether or not you grant 1 or 2 marijuana outlets. The Industries Grower Association has said that not even 1% of the California's 68,000 known cultivators have permits. And even those marijuana retailers who are permitted are not without serious issues. UC Davis studied samples from over 20 permitted dispensaries and found 100% of them were contaminated with mold, bacteria, and contaminants. But that's what can be expected when a product is allowed to bypass rigorous FDA approval process. Thank you.
Coming on to IB. Barbara Gordon.
Hi, Barbara Gordon, 1345 El Camino Real in San Diego. And I am a County Office of Education Friday Night Live high school youth leader. Our youth group chapter has been working very hard to educate parents on the many kinds of vaping devices that our young people are using today. Our presentations have been both in English and Spanish. Parents have been really caught off guard with all these devices and how addictive that these devices can be. The Juul pen is definitely the most popular with our high school students, and the teens are using them at an alarming rate. Juuling, as the teens often refer to it, can be used for nicotine and for marijuana. My youth are telling me how easy it is for their peers to get the liquid marijuana, and they're getting it from these dispensaries to use in these vape pens. If the city is going to allow some marijuana businesses, I hope you will regulate and the restrictions will be very, very tight and very controlled. It's very concerning to me on so many levels as our young people are using this harmful drug. The CDC reports 1 in 6 of our teens are addicted to marijuana. City Council's #1 job is to protect our citizens. And I said, I hope you will not put the profits of big marijuana over the community and especially our teens. Thank you.
Thank you. The issue of youth vaping and e-cigarettes is something we should address in our ordinance in terms of how we address e-cigarettes and vaping for nicotine as well. So I think that's actually, thank you for bringing that up. That's something we should be evaluating for our smoking ordinance. So maybe that's something we can definitely bring up, and we share your concerns as well. Thank you so much. Kelly McCormick. And is that something we can bring up at a later date or evaluate, or maybe city staff can evaluate our vaping e-cigarette sort of ordinance and how that our tobacco ordinance now might need to be updated?
You bet.
Reflect the new technology.
Without dissension, we'll bring that to a future agenda.
Yeah, all right, great. Thanks for bringing that up.
Good evening. I'm Kelly McCormick, and I live in Carlsbad, and I have a health and wellness referral business that includes some clients in Imperial Beach. And I'd just like to say that you're wise to use caution when considering how you've approached the commercial pot issue in Imperial Beach. Wait and see is a smart approach toward an industry and a state regulatory system that's in flux and way behind schedule with promised protections for both cities and consumers. As you may know, the state's highly touted track and trace system is still non-existent, and people at every level of the supply chain, from growers to retailers, are expected to accurately and thoroughly record every transaction on paper. And I'm sure you can see how the honor system method of accounting increases the risk that pot could be further diverted to the black market. It is still a cash-only business. And we are fortunate enough to live in an area where many people are conscious of eating clean and avoiding pesticides and GMOs in their food. But for some reason, the state and the industry are not on board when it comes to contaminants in pot. If all marijuana was tested, which it's not, there's still no system in place for taking action against growers and manufacturers who sell tainted pot to retailers, nor is there an automatic recall system if marijuana products are found to be contaminated. For those using Medipot, they do so at their own risk. Unlike FDA-approved therapies, Medipot has no uniform standards, dosage potency, quality assurance, or handling protocols in place. There are countless strains to choose from, and dosage is often a guessing game, not even taking into account that studies have found many potency labels to be incorrect. Patients are relying on a 20-something bud tender in many cases to walk them through the process. The pharmacist where I picked up my prescription just this morning earned a bachelor's degree, then went to pharmacy school for 3 years and did an internship. And after that, had to pass a very tough exam to become licensed. How much training does a bud tender have? Finally, many cities are finding that the tax money they were hoping for doesn't even cover the cost that are associated with commercial marijuana businesses, including extra law enforcement costs, social costs, not to mention forensic bookkeeping to find out if you're actually being paid what you're owed. Once again, the state is putting that burden on cities, and they do not provide enforcement personnel. These issues must be acknowledged if lawmakers and citizens are to fully understand the marijuana industry. Thank you.
Appreciate that feedback. Lauren McCormick.
Hi, City Council members. I am a high schooler from Encinitas, but I am also an officer in youth and government that oversees all of San Diego County, so I connect with high schoolers here as well as in my own city. I'm here to speak against opening a dispensary in your city, and a lot of the reasons are about pesticides. But I'll start with a lot of pot business owners say that it'll be sold legally, right? That their owners won't sell to teenagers, but it's ridiculously easy for teenagers to get fake IDs. It's ridiculously easy to get a Medi card when you're 18, and a lot of high school seniors are 18. My friend-ish, he lied and said he had back pain and a symptom was insomnia. He got his card within a week. It's incredibly easy to do that, and I know countless young adults and teenagers who are willing to buy pot and sell it to their friends for an elevated price to make a profit. The issue isn't the dispensaries selling legally, it's the people that go to the dispensaries to buy the products inside, especially when you allow recreational marijuana. But let's say we ignore that and pretend it's not happening, that marijuana is only in the hands of adults. It's still ridiculously dangerous. Even though marijuana has been legalized, the California Department of Pesticide Regulation has hardly put any regulations on it. And they've completely forgotten that a lot of regulations that are okay to put on apples aren't okay to put on marijuana because it's superheated. When you superheat a pesticide, it releases tons of neurotoxins that are really, really harmful to the brain, and it's sent many people to the emergency room. So it's not just the pot that's dangerous, it's what's on the pot because it's completely unregulated. So allowing a dispensary is giving easy access to both a harmful plant and the harmful pesticides that's on it. But even if we ignore all of that, a study in Australia showed that 5% of their traffic deaths were because someone was under the influence of marijuana. And studies of students who smoke almost daily shows that it impairs critical skills related to attention, memory, and learning. It's clinically proven that frequent marijuana users encounter the same issues as tobacco users. It can links to depression, suicidal thoughts, anxiety, worsening schizophrenia. You can overdose on marijuana, and though it doesn't kill you, it has sent people to the emergency room. I've seen my friends, they've had anxiety attacks, horrible paranoia. I've seen them fall unconscious. It's honestly awful what it can do to people, and allowing a dispensary so soon when it's still completely unregulated and illegal by the federal government, we just don't know anything about it. It's been illegal for so long, there are no studies. It's just like when cigarettes were first let out. Everyone thought they were okay, and now we know they're not. Let's be a step ahead this time and wait until we know what you're putting out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming down. Then we have Laura Wilkinson.
Mayor, Council, there seems to be an awful lot of misinformation about the cannabis industry. I want to address them all here, but I left you all pretty big packets and also some maps that I wanted to address. One quick thing too, as of July 1st, the Bureau of Cannabis Control in the state of California will tightly regulate every piece of cannabis that is sold through retail dispensaries in the state that are legally sold. And they will be completely sealed. And they will be completely tested for everything from pesticides to heavy metals. And all of that is on the state regulations website and the Bureau of Cannabis Control.com. the California website if you want to source it and see for yourself. 3 quick things in the items that I left you. Please consider the separation issues. You had a stated intent to bring new investment and improve some of the dilapidated buildings on Palm Avenue and to draw foot traffic to the CMU2 businesses, which could use it with a beach buffer. There are maps that I left to illustrate the delta between the 900 feet and 600 feet, specifically on Palm Avenue. And what it does is it frees up some of the best real estate that needs renewal. Some of the most dilapidated stretches of Palm are made available. The 600-foot buffer will really affect just 3 preschools, and I think reasonable people can agree that preschoolers don't toddle further than 600 feet and they don't cross Palm Avenue without supervision. The state of California only requires 600 feet, so I would ask that you consider that. It won't affect any of the K through 12. The only park it would affect is Teeple Park, and if you want to keep that at 900, it will eat up some of that Palm Avenue. But if you want that urban renewal to happen, those are the buildings that I understand that you want to be redone. And there's a dearth of buildings outside of that at 900 feet. Please consider permitting 2 dispensaries. There's a couple of reasons for that. I certainly appreciate and understand wanting to proceed with caution. But one will not only leave you open to legal challenges and no comparative data. I mean, how will you know it's working if you don't have 2? How will you have a comparison, a compare and contrast if you don't have that? And do you have determined, the actual criterion that you would consider successful or not successful? That's really important in terms of determining that. I would also mention that no other city in California has only licensed 1 dispensary. Even Colfax, California, population 2,000, is doing 2. So before you decide to go with 1, please research why the other cities are doing 2. There may be a legal reason behind that. And I know nobody wants to put the city at undue risk if that's one of the reasons. Number 3, please consider reaching out to consultants. Chula Vista and La Mesa are working with consultants that have considerable experience, have written ordinances up and down the state that have withstood litigation challenges. They have the experience and they have the resources to help small towns like IB. And they may save you endless heartaches and help you get to the tax revenue and the additional physical security that is required by state law for all of these buildings. And they'll get you these new businesses up and running in the way that Imperial Beach wants them up and running with those criteria considered. These services will cost the city nothing. I think we can confirm with the city attorney that because it's all borne by the applicants in terms of their fees. And it's really to get the outcome you desire. Please consider reaching out to professional help that has experience doing this and has made the mistakes on the other municipalities first. Thank you.
I don't think so, but yeah. No, I know she had to leave to feed the grandkids. So. No, the last speaker hit on a lot of the stuff anyway. I do agree that it would be probably wise to have a consultant group or something to look at this a little more. I saw the tentative ruling. I didn't go to the hearing last Friday, but I assume it was upheld. So it gives you more
time. Do you
want
to give an update? We do that afterwards.
So I presume it was upheld by the judge. It made sense to me. So I was just going to kind of hit on the letter, a little bit of that, and as a that the single outlet again, I think is a bad idea with a monopoly, higher prices. I did notice some litigation on the internet. I didn't get into heavily about it, but there was in Los Angeles. There's a cannabis law group that is trying to bring in business to argue against a Measure D, that it violates the intent of the state acts because it prevents patients from having safe access to affordable medication. They're basically using the California version of the ADA on litigation on that. Again, I think the zoning, I go back to the businesses up there needing help. These are mom and pops, okay? To me, you vote against C2, that's a vote against those and not only the people, probably a couple thousand people that would like access on the west side, but the west side businesses especially, okay? You saw what I brought up about the where is it here? The local premium that the businesses down there, sure, they're going to get additional business, Carl's Juniors and all that stuff. Those are corporations. That money flows out, So I just ask the next time, if you do vote against C2, the next time you go in Katie's or the West Side Cafe or any of those small mom and pops, explain why. Okay, so thank you.
Great, thank you. Carol Green?
My name's Carol Green. I own some property here in Imperial Beach. I live now in Chula Vista because our family got too big for our little itty bitty place that we still love. I'm here because for two reasons. I have three young adult children that have grown up being exposed to the advertising of marijuana and other harmful things. And I also, but they're okay. But also I care about all the kids. And what's happened is you learn that it's not just your 1, 2, or 3 kids that you can affect. And so I've gone into public health, and I want to just briefly explain a couple of factors about public health. And I'm going to get off the topic of marijuana just for a second. Well, first, let me say what I want to say so I don't run out of time. I think that one retail outlet's a perfect amount of time for you to make a judgment. I don't think you should be bullied, harassed, or blackmailed into changing what you've thoughtfully thought of by people that want to make a lot of money and profit off of our kids and off of our neighborhood. I do consider this my neighborhood. I think it's good that you don't allow other violators, people that have done things wrong in the past. I would consider having some kind of an appeal process, because what will happen is the reason people want more than one shop is because there's more than one person that wants to make a lot of money. So those are my thoughts on the ordinance. I would stick with one and then see how it goes. You can always add more. It's much harder to pull them back. And yes, seek some consultants. Talk to people in public health. Talk to people in other cities. Don't get all of your consulting from people that are going to make a lot of money off of the businesses in here. So just briefly about public health. We always say, oh, you should talk to your own kids. Just tell them that it's dangerous. But what we learn from public health is that laws and policies change things much more quickly, much more effectively than just talking, especially to teenagers whose frontal lobe is not yet fully developed. For example, the seatbelt laws. In the 1980s, we knew that wearing seatbelts was the best way to save lives when you were driving in a vehicle. And we also knew that most of the people, and I don't have all the statistics and I don't have time for it, that died in motor vehicle accidents were because they were thrown from the vehicles. So we knew that in 1981. And yet in 1981, only 11% of people wore seatbelts in cars, and they were installed in all the cars then. By 2010, 85% of people wore seatbelts in cars. Now there's still 15% that are just not going to take that warning, but that's a dramatic increase. And what happened? Why did that happen? Because in 1986, seatbelts became the law, and people didn't want to get a ticket, and that changed the behavior dramatically. Let's talk about cigarette smoking. You just talked about that. In the past 20 years, cigarette smoking, pardon me?
Just want to wrap it up.
Okay, has dropped by 59%. And that's because of the laws that we've put in place. So I just would like to say that start with one dispensary, see how it goes, think about the public health implications to your citizens, and I'll drop off this article about
you can drop it in the city clerk. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Meg Lund.
Good evening. Thank you. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I've been extremely ill.
And to make for the record, you live in Coronado, but you
I live in Coronado, but I own 2
Beach?
properties in Imperial Beach.
Okay. Commercial properties or just residential?
Private homes that we're fixing up. And so I may be living in Imperial Beach. But the reason is I spoke is because I felt compelled by certain comments made tonight, because I don't think ignorance is bliss. I think ignorance is detrimental to everyone in the world. But I'm not speaking as a business person because I'm unprepared for that right now. But I'm speaking because of the fact that I was very, very against any kind of illegal drug use coming up. I mean, I've even in the 1970s put somebody out in the New Jersey Turnpike because they had pot in my car. I left them with the state troopers, but you know. However, I got sick and have just recently had pancreas surgery. The only reason I'm standing in front of all of you is because of medical cannabis and the fact that comments are being made such as, alcohol, tobacco, firearms. New York City, we banned trans fats and sugar as well, but for other reasons. The bottom line is kids are still going to get access to that. I've raised 4 teenagers. I mean, they're grown men now, but teenagers are going to find a way to do something that they're not supposed to do regardless. And to deprive people, and this is my only issue with it, to deprive people who need this product. And, Medicare is not paying for it, and we all know that. And just want to say again, the ignorance level, and people are convinced that these are the truth and the facts, and they don't have it. And I thank Lori and the other gentleman for speaking with some intelligence. But the bottom line is treason is also a federal crime. But as Patrick Henry said, if we don't all hang together, we will surely hang alone. And last but not least, I know people have opinions that are different than mine or anything else, but I would like someone to look me in the eye and tell me that without this product, and I live in Coronado Cay, so to come down here would be a heck of a lot easier than crossing the bridge. And I'd rather spend my money locally where I have property. But I'd like somebody to look me in the eye and say, you know what, Meg, you get to go back to dying. And then this, because you can't eat anything. But that's okay, because I'm afraid I can't control my toddler, who can also get to the bottle of vodka I've got in the liquor cabinet, or could also get to my cigarettes that I eat, or maybe my food, because, I could stand to lose 10 or 15 pounds. But, the bottom line is you can't regulate what goes on in people's homes. And, we won't get into a whole constitutional discussion. But right now, for me, you're taking away my life if you take this away, because that's what's going to happen. But as long as, other people can't raise their teenagers, that's okay. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Then we have Judy Strang.
Good evening, Judy Strang. I'm here on behalf of parents. I want to thank the person who was the Friday Night Live director, talking about the Friday Night Live chapter's work in bringing vaping parent forums to everyone. They will be doing it for the Imperial Beach PTAs on the 15th in the morning. And it is a concern to us, the vaping oils that are purchased at pot shop. I want to mention a couple of concerns I have, and I am not sure if they can be handled within your ordinance or not. First of all, I think that you've taken very careful and thoughtful consideration of all of our comments, and I appreciate that. And I think your plan to proceed with one as a sort of a pilot project is a wise move. But what I've noticed in San Diego is the blatant advertising. And I understand that you probably have control over the window space of a pot store, but I don't think that you have any ability to do anything about the very blatant billboards, for instance, that we see throughout the city of San Diego, and the advertising in magazines, because I understand that's a First Amendment right. And I tell you that so that you be prepared. Once you permit a pot shop, you will see billboards and other types of advertising in your city. And I'll ask the attorney maybe to weigh in what sorts of things might be available to you. I also wanted to tell you what was going on with the Bureau of Cannabis Control, who's responsible for the permitting and regulations for the state. They opened on January 1st for business, and they did temporary permits, which just recently expired, and they have extended those temporary permits. I think that it would be very optimistic to say that by July 1st, that they are going to be prepared to enforce the regulations at this point that are only temporary. And of particular concern are the regulations regarding testing. I also want to mention that if there's a way to write into your ordinance something about, I think someone mentioned it, forensic bookkeeping, so that you have some idea of the information that's being given by the pot business is accurate, and so that you're not at the mercy of self-reporting, because I think that would be a problem. And finally, on behalf of the parents, we have brought to town an excellent speaker on behalf of the American Chemist Society, and they'll be here at the end of the month. And I'd just like to leave the announcement regarding this opportunity to learn more about pot.
For the record, you own a condo in Ivy, but you live.
The family trust does, and I live in San Diego.
San Diego, great, thank you. Thanks for coming. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. That's it for the public comment. Great. Can the city attorney please give us an update on the whole issue of the referendum or the proposed ballot initiative, so we're clear on the status of that?
Sure. So as you recall, there was a citizen initiative that was filed with the city, I believe in late July, early August of 2017. It was submitted to the city after gathering signatures in March, and the city clerk or the city essentially rejected the petition. That's the city clerk's job, to review a petition to see if it meets the elections code requirements. The petition was rejected because it did not meet the election code requirements. The petitioners that submitted the cannabis petition then filed a lawsuit against the city, which went to court last Friday, and the judge upheld the city's decision to reject the petition because the petition did not meet the requirements of the elections code. So at this point,
Thanks for that
that's the
update. I
status.
appreciate it. Okay, we're now in the public or the city council discussion. No more speaker slips. Questions for staff? I don't have anybody that's asked to speak. No discussion. Mr. Briggs.
I had Mr. Dish, thank you very much for your work on this, as well as the subcommittee. I remember at one point in time, we had on this city council, we had authorized the expenditure of $65,000 to aid the subcommittee in acquiring expertise, research, consultants, whatever. And I just assumed that probably didn't happen. So that's just one point, because there are a number of issues that have been raised by the public comment, as well as issues in my own reading of this and thinking about it, as well as many of us from our discussions. We have questions, I think, about what the impact of this in Imperial Beach might be. And, possibly with more research or case studies, we'd have a better idea. But I want to just throw out a few general things. I have some specific comments on the ordinance, which I can submit as a document to the city attorney and city manager. But there are some general things that I'd like to just raise as concerns. Well, let's ask about that, because I want to do the right thing. The process of taking comments on this ordinance now that will go into producing a proposed ordinance that will actually be put to the public as a public hearing item. Will that allow comments to come in between now and that time, or a certain deadline, like a public comment period on draft regulations? Or does everything have to be said now or submitted now that's going to go into the any further adjustments in the proposed ordinance that we have in front of us? Is that clear?
No, there's no law that requires everything be submitted tonight. Changes can be made, up until you're essentially even at the June 2nd meeting. The hard part is you don't want to be revising an ordinance at the public meeting at which you're supposed to do the introduction. So, the sooner the better for comments, but it's not like tonight is a deadline cutoff period. There's no legal deadline. Staff's just trying to move this along and set some dates to keep the city council on track because of the expiration of the moratorium.
So my understanding is you're looking for general and specific input from the council tonight as part of that process.
Right.
Good. Well, I'm a little concerned about the several criticisms of just doing one dispensary. And we've had this discussion before. Nothing. I was originally advocating that we do two, and then because we would have competition, and we would mitigate against some of the concerns that have been expressed. Two and done, as opposed to one and maybe not done. The competition issue, I think, is important for quality control, as well as avoiding price gouging of our local residents. This whole question of higher prices that I'm concerned about with just one outlet, I think is worthy of getting some feedback from staff or the subcommittee members as to whether in their work on preparing the proposal, they saw any evidence that kind of problem might surface with just one. Another point related to that is that was made in public comment was that we would be the first and so far only city to of any size to just allow one retail outlet. And you know, I don't mind taking a leadership position on many issues. We do that, and we're out in front on a lot of things, but sometimes you don't want to be at the bleeding edge all the time. So if that's true, I think we need to know whether we're the first to authorize one. That's something that we can easily address or change if we are concerned about it. I just mentioned a few of these, and then other council members can mention theirs. You guys can take notes and respond to them, sort of thing. Yeah, okay. And this is not detailed comments, but sort of broad policy issues. The impact of what we're doing on our existing medical marijuana users. I'd like a little bit of comment, please, on, because we are repealing part of our authorization for medical marijuana use. And I'm not quite sure I understand technically.
This ordinance allows a dispensary to sell medical or recreational, and you currently prohibit large-scale medical dispensaries. So this will be allowing medical and recreational cannabis sold at a dispensary.
People have all this stuff in what they can do in their homes, and it has nothing to do with
But it also, yes, exactly. It also, it doesn't restrict the primary care providers and their clients and that sort of thing from doing what we allow them to do right now.
Right.
Correct. Okay. All right. Thank you. Another sort of larger concern is how we fund the monitoring and law and regulatory oversight and enforcement. This ties into some of the technical issues that are in the ordinance, such as the application fee and that sort of thing. But I don't know whether, you know, we've talked about, but never really kind of reached any conclusion amongst us up here about whether we're going to try to do some sort of a sales tax and put that to the public or other assessment to raise the funds that will be needed to perhaps bring another sheriff's deputy on board, which we could use in general. And it would be, even if we don't have any increased crime because of use of having a marijuana dispensary in Imperial Beach, it'd still be a good thing if we could get another sheriff deputy and fund it, just to be on the safe side. So revenue generation, I think, is a broad category that I'd like to know a lot more about and how we use that to safeguard the community. This whole question of quality assurance or some sort of quality assurance there's 180 degrees of different allegations that have been made tonight about whether it's completely unregulated and unsafe and nobody knows what they're getting, and it's just spinning the roulette wheel on one hand, versus there are plans at the state level for some sort of quality assurance regulation. I'd kind of like to hear a little bit more about that before we set in motion a process that's going to make completely unregulated cannabis available in our community. Again, it's a public safety issue, and this ordinance is laced with concerns about public safety. And then, of course, the issue, Mr. Mayor, that you picked up on earlier, which is the types of tools, but there's also the question of the concentrations and strengths. I'm not necessarily advocating this, but I remember, I know I've been in some states that only allow a certain amount of alcohol percentage in beer, 3.2 state and that sort of thing. Can't stand the stuff. There may be black markets around for people to get around that, but I guess one of the concerns is whether we are authorizing a retail outlet that can actually issue or sell products that have such a concentration that could do damage to some people. And so that's a general concern that I have for whether we want to regulate or think about regulating in that area. The degree of the hallucinogenic component in cannabis, THC, is obviously the customer is going to want to have as much choice as possible, but there may be questions of general public safety that we may want to explore. So those are some of the broad, to me, policy questions that I had, and I have some other more specific suggestions for the actual wording that I can get to later.
Just for the record, it's my understanding the ordinance is talking about a possible, there's this sort of discussion about one. Our ordinance that we draft ordinance is very clear, calling for two, just with a pilot, a pilot study phase. So we're advocating 2 dispensaries, not 1. So I just want to make sure that's clear, because that's been talked about this evening. So the maximum we're talking about is 2.
I'm not sure. I think it's
very clear in what the draft ordinance.
I think it says 1 unless, after a year we do studies and determine that it looks like.
Well, we can look at the draft language, but I think Councilmember Bragg wants.
Well, I think we'd ask our city attorney whether that's-
Mr. Dush, would you please clue us in on that particular issue?
Sure. The way that the ordinance is crafted currently is that it would permit 1, and then after a year, if the city council chose, they could provide direction to allow for a second.
Okay. Good, thanks.
Everybody clear?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dush. And I guess I would like to start off with a number of thank yous, and that does include you, Mr. Dush, who have spent untold hours on this issue. And I've often kidded with him that if he ever left the city of Imperial Beach, he could be a consultant on this issue. He has spent an inordinate amount of time. So I want to thank you for that, because we rely on your guidance. And that includes our city manager as well, whose humor when he wears his Jerry Garcia's ties on these meeting days is kind of funny. They do bring a bit of humor to it. And I appreciate that. I also wanted to include our city attorney. This whole issue is a changing landscape from day to day, week, month to month. We never know what it's going to look like. And I guarantee you, this ordinance will change. It will mature. It will flush itself out. And I think what this ordinance does do is one of the things that the community asked us to do was provide safe access. So I'm comfortable with that. I also wanted to thank the city staff for our open house. We were there. It was one of the best open houses I've ever attended in any community. It was well attended with over 100 people there and giving their input and honesty. It was absolutely great. I'd like to thank Mark West for being our ad hoc. On the ad hoc committee, I did want to touch briefly on a comment that Councilmember Spriggs raised about the $65,000 that we had talked about. That was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was for a consultant to test the waters of whether the community, what was the percentage of people for and against. And there was also some other issues that it was going to be possibly considered. So that's, and what happened was, consultant at the first brush said, I can't tell you, you know, it was still a 50-50. So it was, we felt not money that was going to be wisely spent. I also want to thank the cannabis industry, none of them are here, the cannabis owners who invited us in and spoke with us very honestly and about their revenue, their security. I mean, they opened their doors and arms to us, and I really appreciated that because it was really eye-opening. And lastly, I wanted to thank the community for being part of this process. And some of you have spent a great deal of time, Mr. Neal, you as well, and Ms. Wilkerson, you also a great deal of time and have provided guidance for us. I want to thank you for that. I wanted to, if you think it's appropriate, I did have some questions and comments on the ordinance itself. And they're brief, I'll try to be very brief. I would like to support having a consultant as part of the review process. I think that's very important. I think they may have some insight that, quite honestly, we don't have. I was questioning.
Can you be more clear on that? And because I think there was sort of discussion about having industry consultants work for free. My concern would be sort of conflict of interest and sort of
I was thinking
transparency.
of our consultant that we have currently, HDL.
HDL is a company that prepares the information for our sales tax and our property tax, and they have also helped several municipalities with this same issue. And whether that's revenue generation or reviewing ordinances or some of those.
So you're asking for some economic forecasting assistance.
Well, and my comment on that is, you know, how good is that going to be? But I did really appreciate, and I forget which speaker used the comment of the forensic bookkeeping. I thought that was just brilliant. So to maybe include that. Mr. West, and I think this might have been your suggestion, Mayor Pro Tem, if you would, the 2 vehicle charging stations, do we think there would actually be room for 2 of them? And would that preclude an ADA parking space? So I wanted to, because if we are talking about people with disabilities, people who need that, I wanted to make sure, and if you could talk a little bit about the inclusion of ADA parking at any of the properties or the property that may be.
Yeah, any site would have to fully comply with all of the building codes in addition to the additional criteria that would be established in the ordinance.
Okay.
And so that would be a straight building code requirement.
Okay, so, and the reason why I raise that is because the ADA spots are larger than just a regular
Correct.
parking space. So
yeah, so in addition to the spots, there would have to be a safe, travel path as well for anybody that.
Okay, so would there ever be the consideration of, well, gee, we could do 1 charging station and an ADA, or is it 2 charging and an ADA?
And there's no reason that you couldn't combine the 2 as well. So there's lots of design solutions.
That's why you're here, Mr. Dush. Thank you. Okay, so that took care of that. It was the parking. I had notes on that. And our speaker, Ms. Strang, raised something that I had made notation of too, and that was billboard advertising. I know we can't regulate it in the city of San Diego, but I think when we speak with our
we don't permit billboards currently or off-premise signage.
Right, but when we speak with our colleagues around the county and the city of San Diego, I know when I see them, for some reason I'm not a big fan. Enough said about that. And that pretty much concludes my comments as far as the ordinance itself. I didn't have any other suggestions or comments.
Thank you so much, Mr. West. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Your questions are answered, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Bragg, thank you too. The ad hoc was a learning experience for everyone. So I do have a question for the city attorney. So now that we have, when we were brought this original complaint from the ad hoc, from the cannabis industry, it really put our group under a time crunch. And that is one of the reasons why that 65,000 was we reached out and got a very quick answer. Thank you from the city manager, but it put like a vice grip on us. And I'm wondering, have we put this June 6th time, we put that out based on that we were kind of trying to meet some deadline. Do we have some more time?
So the June timeline, the timeline that staff is working under at this point now is the moratorium expiration on February 1st, and the fact that you only have one meeting in July, and then once the holidays come again, the meetings kind of break up, and your ordinance to take effect needs to go to Coastal Commission for approval too. So it's hard to say. I mean, we can't predict when Coastal Commission is going to approve things. So staff's intent was to put some permanent ordinance to get that together with the city council so that you could get that moving on the process and for it to be fully in effect before the February 1st moratorium expires. So there's probably a little leeway. I mean, as I said, I can't predict exactly when Coastal Commission is going to hear it. And we just want to make sure that they hear it and it is in effect before that February 1st date. So I think there's a little leeway. I wouldn't say months of leeway at this point in time, because one way or another, you need some permanent ordinance in place, you know, no matter if it's
And I know that the election is
allowing, prohibiting, right.
I understand. Okay, well, thank you. All right, so I am, when we looked at this, you know, I think I did a little bit more research and spoke to some communities that are outside that I wanted to find in California that are bringing these ordinances in. One of them was identified in your letter, Ms. Wilkerson, as Grover Beach. Very similar population to Imperial Beach, has some demographics that are similar. But they...
It's a lot smaller. I think
it's
8,000,
like
10,000?
No, it's 19.
19, okay.
So the one thing I would say is they, instead of going down a process that was really driven by, they took an outside organization, HDL, to help draft their ordinance, and they actually spent the time, worked with their consultant, and came up with this. And well, you know what they came up with? They decided that in their little town, which is smaller than us now, Grover Beach is in SLO County, they decided to put in 3 cannabis distribution businesses. So I actually was like, wow, it seems like a smaller town would want less. So I called up there, talked to the council member, and he was really interested in you know, that we took a lot of advice from the HDL, and HDL they're a proven one that we already use on our payroll and taxes, right? That's what we use them for. And so I kind of did a little bit more digging on HDL. HDL has actually worked with the city of Chula Vista as well. So I have never been a big fan of the wording on the one, having one and then opening it up, and if it goes well, having it open another one within a year. So I would really like to see that if we could get HDL to come in and do a review of our ordinance and look at each one of the facets of it, and to make sure that it meets the sniff test. It makes sure that it really does provide cover for the city. I don't want us to end up in litigation for it, and I'm very concerned that the cannabis industry has some. I wouldn't say they have deep pockets, because everybody.
No, they have deep pockets. They have deep pockets of lots of cash.
They do.
Millions of dollars in cash they don't have to account for. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that we protect ourselves a little bit, and I would like to see HDL do a review of it. And I would also like to entertain to the council that I haven't been a big supporter of this one and within a year. Can we?
But you voted against the last part. I just want to make sure for the record, you voted against the ordinance.
I completely. Okay. And I'm very happy that I voted against it.
Okay.
I would like to see that I would like to see the wording redone that we say we are going to open up two cannabis businesses unless within a year we have some type of data that proves that we shouldn't open it. So we open one up, but we have two in the wording. I think that that's, instead of saying that we have one and if everything goes right, we have two. Maybe we're going to open up two with trial one of one.
If I may, if I could ask the city attorney, I believe, and you voted against it.
Mm-hmm.
So to raise that issue again, it would have to be a member of the council who voted for it.
That wasn't final action. You guys haven't taken final action on this. You're giving us direction. So that's the position you're in at this point. And tonight isn't even a final vote.
Not until the
introduction and then the adoption.
So I think I am on the record for not supporting it. I will not support the way it is written tonight. But I think it's important that we do an outside organization like HDL, which is they will do it for free, come out and review it, and I would like to see the wording on that change, and then I could move forward with the support.
Mr. Patton. Just to recognize, when did we start this process? January 2017?
Wow.
Or just so I'm clear on how long we've taken. It's May, so we've had 4 months this year, and then 12 months last year, so that's 16 months. And then when did we start before that? So just I want to make sure I'm clear in terms of process.
As I was telling Lori Bragg, I became the city attorney in 2010, and at that time, the city had a moratorium in place for medical cannabis. So since 2010, I've been working on this continuously for the last 8 years.
Evaluating whether they're going to have a commercial dispensary. When did that process start? What was it? December 2016?
It was shortly after Prop 64.
Yeah.
November.
So it was, yes.
So we've had
December,
18 months,
January.
a year and a half. We've been looking at that. Okay, I just want to make sure that.
Well, that's not fair, Mayor. I think you're saying that time frame is something that we should be moving forward on, and we are moving forward as fast as critically possible on a very difficult situation and a difficult decision. There are people for and against this all over, and we're not the only city that's in this position. So I think that's not fair.
I'm just telling you, I want to make sure for the public and transparency's sake, we're clear on that we've had 18 months to evaluate this. So we just haven't rushed it. 18 months. It's a year and a half. Mr. Patton. Thanks.
Okay. First of all, I honor everybody that spoke tonight. I have 3 things. I'll go pretty quick. Laura McCormick, high school leader back there, asked a question. I don't need an answer, but it's something we could look into. And for me, this is not about money, making money for our city. But she did ask, what will this cost us versus the taxes that we'll receive? So if we could kind of find out it's on one dispensary, I think that was a great comment. So thank you for that. 2 consultants kind of scares me. The fact that we would need 2 consultants, one possibly from the industry, one from somewhere else. Both of them probably would be from outside of Imperial Beach, coming in and saying, this is what you need to do. When somebody up here, I forget who, said we had a great person that could be a consultant if he moved out of IEB, but he's right here with us right now. And I think the rest of our staff, I think we worked pretty well on this. And if we had HDL, their consulting could take months. That's just my take on consulting. And then my third thing is, again, I honor the public. We spent a lot of time on this. At first, I was going to say, I'll keep this as written, but I'm flexible. I think there's some good points that have been brought up. And it's not about depriving people, obviously, because we want to go ahead and have one dispensary, and I'd like to keep that as written, the one dispensary part. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I guess my concern about consultant was, and we've had 18 months to evaluate this. We had this ad hoc committee. We had public discussion. It's the first I've heard of hiring a consultant or getting a consultant. And so I wish 18 months ago we would have talked about that. But I guess my argument is we're elected by the people to make decisions. We've had lots of information. We've had public feedback. We've had industry consultants. We've had our own, I think you said 100 people come to a meeting. So now we have information. It's our job as elected officials to make tough decisions. This is an election year. It makes it even tougher. But the fact is, I guess my concern again, and I think the people have spoken in IB. We had one resident of Imperial Beach, Greg, Mr. Neal, thank you for coming out. You've been consistently here, give their feedback. I think what we're seeing is, and Mr. Miller, who supported the ordinance as written. So what we're seeing is by not being here, it's very clear to me that the public supports us moving forward on this, because I think we all assumed at the beginning there'd be a lot more public input. But to me, what we're seeing is what I saw recently in the San Diego Union Tribune, the more recent polling that was done, that frankly, the public is very okay with what's happening. They're not concerned about it at all. I think it was something in the 60-something%, which reflects IB residents' approval of legalization of recreational marijuana. So my feeling is we should move forward. Forensic reporting, that's something we should be doing for every sales tax. If we think everyone's gouging us on taxes, we've got all kinds of mom and pop stores here. I'm assuming we have protocols in place to question that, or maybe that's a city attorney or DA thing. But it's a legitimate issue, especially with cash. Price gouging, I just don't see that. The marijuana industry raised that last time. I just don't see anyone gouging IB residents. IB residents don't accept price gouging. They will travel 50 miles on the bus and they get cheap weed. I just guarantee you, they will know right away if they're being screwed over in IB, and they will find the best possible deal on weed. So I just don't see that happening. The quality issue, again, I think you're right. But I mean, on the other hand, we're depending on the state of California to regulate weed. And frankly, we depend on the state of California to regulate alcohol. The most dangerous drug in this city is alcohol. The second would be opioids, which are sold by CVS in the pharmaceutical industry, a highly regulated industry that has created a huge crisis in this country, if not the worst drug addiction crisis that we have, in addition to alcohol. So I get it, but I think we have to balance that. So my feedback is we've had 18 months to evaluate this. This ad hoc committee has done a great job. I think as elected officials, we need to move forward and make a decision, yes or no, whether or not we want to do this. That's just my feedback. If you want more information, I think that's fine, but I'd like to see it done by June so we just don't keep dragging this on. Because frankly, I think the people have spoken. They want access and they want us to make decisions. And that's very clear, because I want to thank everybody else from around San Diego County who's attended, but our own residents aren't here. To me, that says they expect us to make a decision and move on, and they're not opposed to this. So that's just my feedback. I share Mr. Patton's feedback on one. To me, it was very clear in the last discussion. We go back and look at the minutes. It was very clear to me that the idea was to move to 2, unless there was some sort of problem. If there's a disaster and this is a mess and our crime rate goes off the roof, as is happening in Colorado, whether or not it's weed related, it's very clear that crime rates have gone up in Colorado. They're not clear why. That's something that's objective information. So that's something I think that to me would seem to be the real issue. Dependent variable is crime rate go up. If we have this crime wave and we can target that or connect that to the dispensary, then we have a problem. So anyway, can we get a consultant to work for free by June? And it's not really clear what you want the consultant to do.
Honestly, I just wanted him to review it. And one of the issues was, the sales tax.
Okay, so we want a sales tax analysis. Is that something that can be done?
I don't know.
Do we have a detailed economic impact analysis? Do
And
we know
if
how much
not,
potential we could generate? We
it's
don't
not
know
a
that,
deal
or-
breaker.
I don't know the answer to the question right now. I mean, we would have to reach out to HDL, find out what their timeline would be. I couldn't answer that right now.
Versus San Diego, Chula Vista, and Chula Vista may not ever have any dispensaries. Their process is dependent on whether or not they're going to have a ballot initiative. They might not have that.
Right.
So,
So, well, I just wanted to add that if we can, it's
Right,
not
okay.
a deal breaker for me. I support the ordinance as it is. I'm ready to move forward.
I'm in favor also of moving forward. There are a couple of unanswered questions, and one of them ties in with this last one we were just discussing, which is revenue measures that can support additional oversight and regulatory oversight and law enforcement. I mean, we are going to need to have more sheriff monitoring, drive-bys, sit out in front, surveillance, whatever. I'm not talking about 24/7, anything really heavy duty, but we will need more, and we will need to gather information that's going to allow us to make a judgment in 12 months about whether this is working, what some of the effects are, and that sort of thing. We have to think through that aspect of it. We talked about this before. What kind of data? How do we collect it so that we can make an objective decision about going to number 2? So we have to deal with that question. That question was raised at our last meeting, and there's still no real answer for it. So maybe a consultant is going to be necessary over that 12-month period, Mr. Mayor, and others on the council, to help us with the monitoring. I don't know. But we need an answer. We need to have information. We just can't sit and do business as usual and not really gather that data for a decision that our ordinance says we need to make.
Councilman Briggs, can I address that particular issue? You know, I think we might be able to tie two of these things together that you're talking about. First, it might take HDL some time to come up with whether or not, you know, there's what would happen with revenue if they were to do a revenue versus expenditure. And, you know, that's going to take some time and some work and probably some data from them. So the idea, if we are going to have one, we can have them, again, working on that, monitoring on that, because for us to be able to raise the sales tax, of course, that's going to have to go to an election. So what we could do is make sure that we are gathering the type of information so that if the city council felt like they needed to raise additional revenues for a second dispensary or even for the first one, we could be putting that together so that we might be able to even have a special election in June of next year or something like that, so that we could consider an increase in the sales tax, which would probably be the appropriate revenue source for this particular item. And we could probably have them study that during the course of the year for sure.
Can we do a sales tax targeted on this item?
You can.
And why wouldn't we do that this November?
I don't know that we could. Well, we could probably put together a ballot measure and try to get something on for November, but boy, we'd have to get going on it.
Well, you know, okay, this again is another subject.
I'd have to look at the deadlines.
We've discussed on this council, not reaching any conclusion or any clear vote direction, but we have talked about a sales tax on cannabis in Imperial Beach to support other city priorities, including those related to the cannabis operation. So to me, this is just, you know, normal business that we ought to be looking at. I see the two as being directly tied together. Whether we want to go for June, but then that's still a special election, and that's expensive as well. So it just seems to me that, you know, we need to be looking at how we're going to get compensatory revenue for what will be obviously a need for monitoring and possibly more law enforcement and certainly data gathering.
And Councilman Spriggs, I think you understood, but I don't want to miss anyone else too. I was talking June of 19. We couldn't certainly have a special. We've passed the deadline. Okay.
I know.
I just want to make sure people understood.
So I think there's.
Can I address one thing? The ordinance has language that they have to pay the regulatory monitoring costs, and that the city council gets to set that amount via resolution. A tax is a different thing. So there's already a mechanism in here for them to pay their fair share of what the city council deems as the regulatory monitoring costs.
I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Okay.
Thank you. So that'll be another agenda item that we will take up parallel.
That would be, that probably is going to come later. It's not going to come at the June meeting because it doesn't need to come at the June meeting, and staff obviously has to do additional research into what that number is going to be. But that doesn't have to, the reason why it's in the ordinance saying that the city council sets the regulatory monitoring fee via resolution. So that can be modified, changed as you're going along and you find you need more cost in this area, code enforcement, sheriff, etc.
So that is going to be a work of art to develop that would benefit from, and I'm not trying to feather the pockets of consultants, but it would benefit from best practices in other places that have tried to use such a fee to compensate themselves for the cost of the operation.
Absolutely.
the city. And whether, and to develop, I say it's going to be a work of art because you want to develop it because the cash business, you want to develop it in such a way that, you know, you collect fees that aren't necessarily tied to excellent bookkeeping, forensic or otherwise. So, I mean, to me, this, we have to pay some attention to this. You know, enough said.
And so for the record, if we approve something in June, and you talked about the Coastal Commission, it could take 6 months for the Coastal Commission to evaluate, 6 months to a year to evaluate something.
Well, hopefully, certainly before February of 19.
So that could be 8 months.
Right. Right.
And then we have our own sort of second, first, and third reading. So we're looking at least a year out for anything to be approved.
Yeah, I just want to be careful on just saying the word tax. And I think we need to get the ball rolling on this, and we have provisions in there. But right now, this is so new, I certainly couldn't support a sales tax that's unwarranted, and just because. But that's my 2 cents.
All right. Well, all of you getting feedback? That's all we were asked.
I just had a couple more things I wanted to suggest that go right to some of the language, not technical but broader, and the technical ones I'll submit.
You already gave feedback. Is it the additional items?
Yeah, I'd said that there were some things I wanted to say about the ordinance itself that rather than a general sort of policy point. For example, in the whereas clauses where we added a whereas that reflected the fact that Imperial Beach supported Proposition 64. And I think we ought to put it's way more than a majority. We use this term, a majority supported Proposition 64. It's really 62%, or if you want to round it off to 60, that's fine. But it's an important point because we are going forward with this, and it should be on the record that this wasn't just 51% or 50.1% of the community, like some other communities, including Chula Vista. This was nearly 2/3 of those who voted for Proposition 64, or those who voted in the last election on Proposition 64. So I think we ought to just go that one step further. And the other comments I will just submit because some of them just have to do with some things that need reconciling within the ordinance. Thank you.
Meant on that last whereas, the vote was to support recreational marijuana. The vote was not, do you want a dispensary in your community? So there's a difference.
Just a comment on the comment, please. we had that well-attended workshop, 100 people. I forgot to bring my card that had the tallying of how people came out on the different questions that you all, the subcommittee, drafted and handed out to everybody. But on the question of whether we should have a dispensary in Imperial Beach, it was overwhelming. It was like about 80 or 81% on that question. So I think that, you know, we are on solid ground politically with our community and moving ahead in the direction that's in this ordinance.
Thank you. That's it. And with that, we adjourn the regular meeting, and now we have closed session. Thank you, Mr. Dush. Thanks to the public for hanging out with us. Appreciate it. And now we call the closed session meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Bragg.
Just let us do the roll.
Bragg.
Yeah, no problem.
Councilmember Bragg.
We're doing the roll for closed session.
Councilmember Spriggs.
Here.
Councilmember Patton. Mayor Pro Tem West.
Here.
Mayor Dedina.
Here. And we're here. What's the matter? What? Yeah.